Testing?
Test, test, test.
Okay, it's perfect.
Okay.
Testing, yes. Greetings, hello everyone. Welcome to our Friday night meeting. We are going to get underway. Welcome to everyone watching at home. First, let's start off with our regular Friday night announcements. Upcoming meetings. This is the exciting one. Next week is our annual election of officers. You've all received the slate. We're going to elect our officers for 2024 to 2025. We'll go over the direction of the club, the state of the club, and again, that's a good time to ask questions and whatnot. So that is, and there'll be food and drink, or some food and drink. No, excuse me, that's the end of the year party. There will be no food and drink other than our usual, other than the usual stuff. Okay. That is next week, and that is by our, if you're wondering why we're having it, it's in the bylaws, so we have to. The next week, very interesting, Ted Stevens, Kim Vasilevsky got him, she met him and got him to come and talk with us. He doesn't usually do many talks at all. He is the photographer. He's been the photographer for several decades at Akron Children's Hospital and photographs the young kids in distress, whatnot, just the whole aspect of the hospital, which is a really interesting, I just, have never met anyone like that. So he's going to talk about his work, what it's like, what he does. That'll be here in the clubhouse. That's April 26th. Then, what we've all been waiting for is finally coming. It used to be in the distance. Now, May 3rd is our first phone competition. Again, this is not part of the competition season. The judges will be members of the club. You cannot embarrass yourself. Just basically is give it a try. It's through ShutterScore, up to 3 pictures. Enter them in. It'll be a lot of fun. So that is May 3rd, our first phone competition. May 10th, we have a Zoom presentation. Very interesting. John Scalera is a bird and wildlife photographer from New Jersey who is also a Photoshop expert, and he teaches multiple courses in Photoshop as well as bird and wildlife photography. And he is going to be talking on bird photography, but everything involved: equipment, settings, examples, processing. He's going to go through all the pictures he takes and kind of break them down too. So from a photographic point of view, it won't just be interesting pictures. A lot of this is the how-to and the photographic aspect. So I think that'll be interesting. That's May 10th. Our next SIG meeting with Dave Bush, studio and artificial lighting. Dave's going to be going over some lighting setups, camera settings, and equipment. So that'll be on May 2nd, the first Thursday of the month. Upcoming field trips. We have a bunch planned. There are more on the calendar. This year we're going to be doing a lot of photo walks, Playhouse Square, whatnot, where members of the club will meet up and walk around, all photographed together. Organized field trips. April 14th, we have the B&O Roundhouse, which is always a favorite, coming up. We've gone there quite a few times. April 25th will be a North Coast Harbor photo walk there as well. More details are on our club calendar. May 19th, one of our most popular trips, back to the wild. Again, though, for those of you who haven't been there, this is I think it's a bird and wildlife sanctuary, mostly birds, but it's a chance to get up close. They will have the hawks, the eagles, and the owls out in their natural, on a tree stump, but they'll have a tether on them of about 10 feet so that you can get up close to these actual birds. No more waiting in the bush and the blinds and whatnot as well. And then you could just, with Photoshop, just take that little tether off as well. But back to the wild, May 19th, we have to sign up for that. That's on our website. Positions needed, we need a chair of the competitions committee. This is one where it just takes organizational skills. We will teach you what you need to know. A lot of it is getting judges. You get to meet a lot of people, but it's basically just kind of organizational. And again, we will teach you everything, but it is something we need. If you're interested, at least in hearing more about it, respond under the information tab on our website under volunteers as well, and just send us a note. Pixel Connection is coming up with the spring demo day, April 27th. They have always treated CPS well and have special offers for us. There'll be free classes for us, giveaways, cash for cameras, free sensor cleaning for CPS members. To sign up for the CPS registration to get all these benefits, you just sign into the website, go to the members portal, and there you'll see the sign up for this, for CPS members. And as always, all of our public meetings are on our YouTube channel. Remember, the Zoom meetings, which are usually proprietary, and the speakers usually don't want that out in the public domain, those are all on our members portal. So SIG meetings and Zoom meetings are in the members portal under video. So you can just sign in and watch any of those, the whole thing. Our public meetings, competitions, meetings in the clubhouse like this are on our Zoom channel. Don't listen to me. They're on our YouTube channel. And to get that, again, on the home page, click on the YouTube icon that's right there. When you get to the YouTube page, click on live. It's counterintuitive, but that's what you have to do. That'll take you to the real page, which are all of our meetings in date order, and you could just scroll down and watch any of these. These go back a year. So, on that note, tonight, we are lucky enough to have back again our own Barb Pennington, who has last time had written the book about the 50 most interesting women in the Northeast Ohio area here too. And now she has a book just came out on 50 men, and she is going to go talk with us tonight and go through the whole process. And without any further introduction, Barb, let me turn it over to you.
First of all, thank you all for being here. It's makes my heart sink, really. So the reason for doing this, I wanted to do this presentation because people have asked me about publishing a book. And when I started with the women's book, I had absolutely no clue. I knew I wanted to do it. I had no idea how to do it. And so it started, I'll just briefly tell you, 20 years ago I worked as a director of patient and volunteer services at Euclid Hospital. And I had about 250 volunteers, and many of them were women. Most of them were women, and women in their 70s, most of them. And I learned so much about aging from them. And I also learned that people didn't really respect them the way I wanted them to be respected, some of the staff. Many of them were retired professionals, and many of them were women that went door to door in the 50s to collect money to build that hospital. And so I thought, someday I'm going to do something about women of age or people of age because they're not respected. And even when they're even at CPS, when they were doing things about having models, they always wanted these beautiful young girls and young men. And like, what about the old people here? You know, there's beautiful older women. So anyway, 20 years later, I was wandering around the Peninsula, and I went into the Peninsula Art Academy, and this gorgeous, beautiful, elegant woman was sitting at the desk. And all those thoughts about doing something about photographing women of age came back to me. And I approached her and I introduced myself, and she said her name was Edna Bradford Ratner. And I said, I would really like to photograph you. And she said, oh my dear, and she just kind of blew me off. But I don't give up easily, and I went back 2 weeks later and I approached her again and I said, Edna, I'm serious, I want to photograph you. And so I did, and that's how that book started. And so she is on the cover, and maybe we can turn the lights, Richard. And when you look at this face tells 1,000 stories. She is now 95 years old, a very accomplished woman, and she is my mentor. And I said, Edna, how can I'm 80 years old and you're at 95 or whatever. And I said, here we are, you're still my mentor. Anyway, that's how the book started. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but I learned. And so I'm going to walk you through the process of how I did it. Okay. So this is my studio. My husband and I were going to downsize, and we ended up putting an addition on our house. Oh, well. So we put a bigger bedroom on, and I said, hey, if we put what's going to be downstairs? I want a studio. I have worked just along many years, and so this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I enjoy photography. And so it's pretty simple. We had to make the ceiling 14 feet high. I do have a fireplace in it, which is fabulous. So it's my little she shack. I have 3 lights. You can see my lights here, and the lights I bought from John Earl Brown, if any of you remember John Earl Brown, who was a member years ago, fabulous fine arts photographer. And this is called a scoop. And this is a very wonderful piece of equipment, because what it does is if you position this under these lights, it bounces light up into the faces. And especially with women, older women, for the book, it softened their faces and their necks. Okay. And these are my lights. They're old lights. They're alien bees, but they work just fine for me. Okay. This is my camera, and this is my setting. This is the setting I use for every single photo. Over 100 photos. I use the same setting, this is a Nikon D850. It's a 70 to 200 lens. And I find that lens to be the most flattering. So people always ask me, where did you find models? And so you have to be looking all the time. And so this is a list of, from the Cleveland Photographic Society, we have all these, and this was really difficult for me because we have so many interesting men here. And I had to really, I picked men that I knew a little bit better, and the choices were good ones, all of them. The Peninsula Art Academy also brought 4 wonderful artists into the book. The publisher recommended these 4. From the women's book, all these women offered some suggestions which I took. And then Steve Kaselek, I worked with 30 years ago at the Beechwood Marriott. And I found him on Facebook. Somebody found him on Facebook. And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, we'll see him and why he was a wonderful asset to the book. Family members, we had a visit, my husband had a visiting business associate, a very interesting man, and while he was there, I said there are only 2 that are not local, and Carlos is one. And then community contacts, restaurant, hairdresser, clothing store, our AV tech, financial advisor, braces. I got Visualign braces when I was 75. Anyway, a contractor that put the addition on our house, the town attorney, and then on the street, you'll meet this guy. And then the senior community group leader, Rothgary, and the proofreaders, and family members. So that's where I found them. So an important thing that everybody said you have to have is a model release. Now, no one has ever asked me to ask anything about a model release, but I have model releases for everybody. And I ask everyone to sign it just to cover me, and just in case the subject would come up. Okay. So this is where the work really begins, because with the biographies, imagine trying to summarize someone's life in a page. It's very difficult. And so these are my handwritten notes. So some people I had to interview because they said, I don't know how to write, I can't do this. So I said, okay, let's sit down, have a glass of wine or a beer or coffee or whatever, and let's talk. And then I would ask them questions and kind of walk through their life and take notes. Some of them typed notes and gave them to me. And then all this had to be condensed into about 150 words. That was really difficult. And so I had to have, I had two people taking these biographies and condensing them down. And then I would have to send them back, out of respect, of course, back to the subject, like back to Laszlo, and say, okay, you gave me your biography, but we had to condense it down to 150 words. Would you please review it and then make any changes? And sometimes we'd go back and forth 3-4 times. Sometimes, one guy was 10 times it went back and forth before he finally approved and accepted what we did. And this is my binder. So this is everybody in the book. This is all the notes. This is all their model releases. And it's all there in case I have to go back and find something later on. So, which brings us to, I'm going to show you, I asked Dennis Wirt if he would model for us today, and I will show you when I would bring each man into the house. And now, it's for adults. Adults are uncomfortable. Oh, here, sit down and let me photograph you. Well, yeah, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So when Dennis came, I said, Dennis, you know what? We need something a little more interesting about you than that shirt. Do you have anything else?
This is the time for the striptease.
Dennis, this is on camera, too.
Now, I bought this shirt for Dennis as a joke, and I love this because he's at Home Depot more than anybody I know. So I say, okay, Dennis, well, sit down and let's see what we got. Okay, well, we don't want a head-on shot, so let's kind of sit to the side and let's try that. Put one foot on the, there, okay. But you know, I think it needs something else, so I think you need some props. How about some props? Just happens to have some.
Go ahead and talk.
So I would take a lot of shots, and I would take as many as sometimes, you know, get a feeling that maybe I already had the shot that I wanted, and sometimes I knew that I wasn't there yet. So I would take a bunch like this, sometimes 20, 30, 40 maybe, and then we would sit down together at my computer and scroll through each one, and we would go through them over and over again until we'd go through them the first round and then, Jen, and eliminate, if he'd say, oh, that's really ugly, and, oh, here, now, isn't this more exciting?
So I need to tell you, first off, this is a low-budget enterprise tonight. She could only afford 1/4 of the village people.
So now I had Dennis, and if you look up here, so I had him sit to the side, and I put that foot, see that one leg is up here, that leg's up, okay. And that's kind of the shot. And that's what we liked. And it looked comfortable, and it kind of represented everything about him. And it told a story about him, and it kind of fit more into the biography, because I wanted the photos to reflect what the story was about. And remember, the stories are very short. So, thank you, Dennis. Okay. So, you perform. So then, I couldn't afford to give everybody a book, but I wanted to give them something as a thank you. So I had a 5x7 printed and then framed for each one, and I had Paul Duda. I don't know if any of you remember Paul Duda that used to be in Brecksville. He's not there anymore, but I would email the photos to Simon, his associate in Ohio City, and he would print all of them on fine art watercolor paper, so they'll last forever. Thank you, Dennis. So that was the process with the photo. So now, okay, we'll go to the next one. So that was the final photo for the book. So now I'm going to I'm going to walk through each one and just tell you just a snippet about each one of these men. So the first one is Jim Rich. He's 66. He worked for Friedman Buick for 31 years. They called him Giveaway Jim because of the great deals. If you go into Chagrin Falls anytime in nice weather, he will be there in front of the popcorn shop on his Harley. He is a character. They call him the mayor of Chagrin Falls. And one time, I was down there with my friend Mary Jane, who's in assisted living at the Hamlet, and I saw him, and he came up and gave me a big hug, and I said, "Oh, Jim, this is my friend Mary Jane." So she puts her hand out to shake, and he grabs her and plants her a big kiss on the lips, and that's just Jim Rich. That's just who he is. Great guy. Hector Corretto is 60. He had a degree in market research and did graduate work in gerontology and found his calling. He is the activities director at the Hamlet. He is a super nice guy. He loves his job, and imagine dealing with all these people, many of which have dementia, and he's so kind and does wonderful creative things with them. Steve Kaselek, you may have seen recently on TV. He's a character also. He was the best window person. He won an award for being the best window person at McDonald's. He was a funeral director, restaurant manager, and he did strip trees for Eastern Onion. He is, years ago, I worked with him at the Beechwood Marriott. He worked in food and beverage. And he calls himself the mayor of Jellybeanville, and he lives in Euclid, and every Easter he decorates his entire front yard in this elaborate display and has people donate money for a charity for women and children. Greg Miller worked for Lubrizol for 27 years. He's on the fire and rescue team, and he also owns Endeavor hot air balloons. So he does, you can see his hot air balloon here. And he also donated bone marrow to a 16-year-old boy and saved his life, and has donated 992 units of plasma. Okay. David Benson, 68. He was an opera singer, a stage actor on Broadway, and now he's a practicing bankruptcy attorney. Tom Bevan is 58. He found his calling representing people that play by the rules against large corporations. He teamed up with Aaron Brockovich, and he's an asbestos attorney. Chris Johnson is 70. He was an Ohio State trooper, an insurance adjuster, and an attorney, and taught himself to play the guitar at age 50. Super nice guy, too, all of them. Okay. David Fike, 64. He had a passion for the construction industry. He worked in his father's business as a teen. He dropped out of college because he realized that this is what he wanted to do. He's had a 43-year career in residential construction, and he built the addition to our house. He's been married for 42 years, same lady. Bill DeSantis, 63. In 1983, he answered a newspaper ad for Sherwin-Williams and retired as the senior vice president and controller of Sherwin-Williams, worked himself up from the very bottom, and as a retirement gift, they gave him a 2021 Corvette. Imagine that. Must have done a good job. He's been married for 35 years. Mike Kopkas. Here's our own Mike is here. There he is. He taught high school math, moved to become a program analyst at National City Bank, worked there for 37 years, and taught part-time at Baldwin Wallace for 26 years for a total work life of 63 years, and he's been married to his wife for 50 years, and a very interesting, sweet guy. Mike's kind of quiet, but there's a lot to him. And his personal life, his faith, his family, his golf, and his teaching, here's camera, are all very important to him. Okay. Chris Bosworth, 72. He refers to himself as a rescue project. He made some poor choices in his life along the way. He served in Vietnam, but at some point, there was a Billy Graham crusade came to Cleveland, and when he became so involved, and at that point, he committed his life to Jesus. He is grateful for the rescues that he has received in his life. He's a photographer. He's one of our own as well. Steve Federer, 65. He was raised with a strong work ethic. His wife had a debilitating disease. His son, he lost his son in a tragic accident, and he got lost in the depths of depression and addictions. He survived leukemia. He got his act together, and he got involved with a new relationship, actually a woman from my book, And he and Carlene have been together for 14 years, and he's grateful for the grace that he's received in his renewed life. Arthur Fantroy, 74. At age 19, he was flying combat missions as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He rescued a downed pilot on Lake Erie from his helicopter and won an award for that. And then he flew life-saving missions for UH and the Cleveland Police Department, and he's still working part-time. He's 74. He loves what he does. John McKenzie's 85. He was a paratrooper and ranger, an outstanding soldier of the 101st Airborne Division's 21,000 paratroopers. He has a master's in business and was hired by Beech Aircraft. He also then became a business, he had his own business as a business turnaround specialist, quite an accomplished man. Mark Pennington, 78, he got D's in high school and barely got out. He joined the Marine Corps, and he tells the story of when he was getting on the bus to go to Paris Island. All the parents were crying and sobbing, and his father had a big smile on his face because he couldn't wait to get rid of them. He joined the Marines and he was in the President Johnson's Honor Guard. Then he went back to school and graduated cum laude and started his own funeral supply business later on. Bob Kozarski, 72. He spent his youth coloring, breaking glass, and exploring the woods and watching rainbows and sunsets and storms. At age 24, he opened his own glass shop. He is the resident glass teacher, blown glass. That's what he does. His work is absolutely phenomenal. And sadly, he thinks he's talking about retiring, but his inspiration was all of nature, and it's reflected in his work. Jose Sacarides, 78, he saw the Spanish Civil War freighters and liberty ships through his father's eyes, and by age 5, he was capturing them in his paintings. He became a commercial art director in New York, and his line, he always says, "I love to draw lines, but the ones that make up my life are never straight." He's a very interesting guy. Complex. David Shanklin, hang on a sec, is 71. He was raised amid construction. He began gathering scrap wood and nails to build tree houses and rafts. He went to Haiti to teach kids and local women about making things. And currently, he's in a 6-year project of carving 8 full-size human figures titled The Journey. This is Mark Twain, and this thing is, he's a very small man. And when he came to my house and brought this enormous piece of really, really heavy, and he's very, very talented. It's really magnificent. Carlos George, 59. His family escaped communism in Guantanamo, Cuba. They lost everything. The family moved to Spain and then to the U.S. His father began importing religious goods when Carlos was age 7. He worked along with his father as he was a little boy and learned the business quickly. He was very smart. He is very smart. And in high school, he was a computer whiz and started developing software programs. He owns a business called San Francisco Imports, and he imports and ships religious goods all over the world. Laszlo Tomaschek, our Laszlo's right here. Laszlo's family fled communism in Hungary during the Hungarian Revolution. His family was united after 8 years of separation. He arrived in Cleveland with no knowledge of English, but had a goal in mind, the freedom to pursue his American dream. He earned his MD and opened his practice in ophthalmology in 1980. Very successful. Glenn Stout, 67. He dropped off food and bedding at the APL and met a rescue dog that he adopted and named him Stanley Guido. He visited nursing homes with Stanley Guido and eventually adopted 2 more little dogs. And now he makes weekly visits to Ronald McDonald House and tells many stories of how putting one of these dogs in one of the kids' laps and what it does and the rewards that he gets from doing this, volunteering. Francis Masuga is 87. When he got his teaching job, which school now I don't remember where it was, and his instructor said, if you can teach here, you can teach anywhere. When he got into the classroom, the students were sitting on the desk, rolling dice and talking. Didn't pay any attention to him. So the one kid in particular was really bad. So he went over, and Francis was a big guy then, and he just picked the whole desk up and the whole kid in it and took him out in the hall. He was a math teacher, and now he is a school guard in Euclid, and he wears hand puppets to direct the kids. And he is a very, very spiritual man. And he goes to Mass every morning and prays for the kids that he knows that are troubled. Stuart Pearl, 73, art director. He was an art director at Ohio Bell for 40 years. His work can be found in books and media at the Cleveland Museum of Art, Holden Forest and Gardens, and the Cleveland Metro Parks. He is the board president of Artists' Archives of the Western Reserve currently. Bill Keaton. Our Bill Keaton's here. Where is he? There he is. 68, is that correct? Okay. He calls himself a student of life, an armchair philosopher, a person who likes to wander. He was an air traffic controller and watched the elements during 9/11. He's a hunter. He likes to cook, garden, and he's also a black belt. His motto is to learn something new every day. Rich Barzik, 80. He was raised to work hard. This has come up very often, and I don't think we hear this now with young people, but with so many, even the women, this motto of working hard, work hard and live within your means. He wanted to be an airline pilot, but it was too hard to compete against the Vietnam vets. So he became a crew chief. He went to work for the FAA and became a crew chief. He loved his job. And then he went from the air to boating, and he was a Commodore for the Great Lakes Cruising Club. That's the uniform. Tim Campbell, 76. He's a gifted writer, writing and producing video documentaries. He started his own AV company, designing and installing AV systems. Jim Rothgary is 80, degree in chemistry, an analytical chemist for Goodyear for 42 years. He loved flying his single-engine Cessna during the quiet hours of night. But he has serious health problems because of his job, but it hasn't held him back, and he's very active in the Hudson community. Greg Kanda, 69. Greg uses his wealth of knowledge in all phases of computing, networking, artificial intelligence, and image analysis to help nonprofit organizations. He has 40 years in music ministry, and he loves jamming. It's so interesting because he's such a techie, but it's kind of opposites. He's music and the arts and the technology, but he's very good at both both that he does. But when he came to my house, I said, bring a prop. He brought, I think, 8 musical instruments. And oh, Greg, this is great, but, it's a little much. We'd like to keep things a little simple, so can we simplify this and just pick one? So that's what we did. Frank Monick was raised, again, to work hard, get paid for what you want, and help all the people you can. He was a licensed barber and then got a degree in political science and went off to have a seat in the Ohio House of Representatives and other government positions, and then ended up with his own consulting firm. John Soraya is one of our own.
Is that the Titanic thing he's holding? The thing he's holding?
It says the Titan.
Oh, Titan.
Titan, yeah. John Soraya, 61, detective, special agent in the crime scene unit of the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. He also has a business called The Working Guy Photographer, and he does photography for the Gladiators and the Cleveland Cavs. When you hear an Amber Alert, John is the one that does them. Robert Bresnan, 51. His upbringing was learning good manners, again, he's been in the restaurant business all his life. He's such a quiet, gentle guy, and if you go, he works at the Mavis Winkles in Twinsburg, and if you go in there once or twice, he'll remember you. And so when I go in there, he'll say, Barb, unsweetened iced tea with lemon. Yeah, and then he'll say, if you need anything, just give me the wave. And he'll remember. And everybody wants to be in his station because he's so accommodating. Joe Vanacek, one of our own. Joe is 70. There he is. Joe's back there. He served in the Independence Police Force for 35 years. He also taught firearm defense and self-defense. He volunteers for Cleveland Metro Parks Outdoor Recreation Department, and he also teaches boat safety for the Cleveland Power Squadron. Correct? George Sipple. George used to be a member here as well. He's won numerous honors and awards, Emmys, Tellys, Platinum album for Dirty Dancing. Remember the movie? What was the movie? It was Dirty Dancing. That was the name of it. He toured with Eric Carmen, and he's written commercial jingles. Wallace Coleman, 88. He's a self-taught blues player. He worked for Huff Bakeries for 30 years and began touring in 1987. He formed the Wallace Coleman Band in 1997. This guy, he's 88. He came to my house, and I had never met him before, and he sat down and he said, in a very gentle voice, he said, Miss Pennington, what would you like me to do? And I said, I would just like you to play for me. And so he did, and then he put the harmonica down and he started to sing. Oh, so sweet. All right. The lifelong friends. These 4 men are all 63. They all went to middle school together, and they have remained friends, very tight friends, throughout their entire adult life, through marriages, children, divorces, deaths, and they all live in Westlake. He lives in Lakewood. So they've all stayed very close together, and that's my son, Chris. Dan Lester, 74. He was in the National Guard repairing helicopters during Vietnam. Now, for some reason, he didn't tell me why, he is a collector of M&M memorabilia. He has an entire room in his house filled with M&M memorabilia. I don't know what he'll ever do with it, but John Good, 86. John refused to smile. I could not make this man smile, no matter what I did. He was a developer. He lives at the Hamlet in Chagrin Falls in assisted living. His body is not working so pretty good, but his mind is sharp as a tack. He was a developer of automated services related to electronic payments. He was a director of Automated Clearinghouse Association supporting 235 banks. He's also a collector, and he found this Barbie car in a flea market, and I guess it's worth a lot of money. David Bush, 78. David's one of our own as well. He's written 300 plus books with over 3 million copies in print. He was one of 3 founders of public relation company that had Kodak and other Fortune 100 companies as clients. Very interesting guy. This was very intimidating. Now imagine, this guy's a photographer and he's written 300 books and he's coming to my house and I'm going to photograph him. It was really intimidating, but he's very nice. Bernie Reiser, 59. This guy, this is a very interesting story because he was married and his wife died, he had kids. Anyway, on Facebook, he saw a posting of Janine Hobby, who was a member of our club. They went to high school together, had gone to high school together, and this was, years later. They're now in their 50s. And so she was doing a show in Columbus selling her photography. And so he decided, hey, why not? So he goes to Columbus, and he says, hi, Janine, remember me? I'm Bernie. And so they clicked, and they got married 4 months later. John Fury, 75. So I'd taken my girlfriend Mary Jane in Chagrin Falls. She liked to shop at Tony's dress shop. And so I went in there, and for some reason, the book about women came up. Mary Jane must have talked about it. And she's so the salesperson, her name was Wendy, was asking me, talking about it, and I said, yeah, I'm in the process of working on one about men. And she said, oh, you have got to interview my brother-in-law. He is such an interesting guy. And I said, okay, well, give me his phone number and I'll call him up. And it turned out he really was. And he wrote a book called Jaywalking with Jesus, which has nothing to do with religion or Jesus or anything else, but he's a real practical joker, and the book is hilarious because he writes about all of his practical jokes he's played on friends and family. John Basso Jr., 68. He had a successful career in bowling. He's in the Bowlers Hall of Fame. He suffered a stroke, and on the 3rd anniversary of his stroke, he bowled a perfect 300 score. He's an author of several books, and he a tribute to cancer survivors, and he donates. He's written 2 books on Italian. One is ethnic cooking and one is Italian cooking. And here's his, and this was a challenge. So he brings this bowling ball that's covered with glued on copper pennies, and the bowling pin is glued on pieces of glass. Do you know how reflective all this stuff is? It was a nightmare. And I said, John, do we really have to have both of these? But it's what he wanted, and okay, it's your show, it's your photo and your story, so be it. Giuseppe Ripa, 63. He was self-taught to cook by his mother in Italy. He started cooking when he was 14. He moved to the U.S. at age 32 and learned to speak English working in restaurant kitchens. He opened his own Giuseppe's restaurant in 2003, which is now closed, and now he's a private chef. When he came to my house, he brought a machete and this knife, and when he sat down on the chair, and he looked like the axe murderer. And I thought, this is not going to work. This is no good. So I said, could we try something else? So I ran upstairs in my kitchen and I grabbed all this scallions and spaghetti and parsley, and I think that worked a lot better than the axe murderer. Eddie Serino, 65. He inherited his entrepreneurial spirit from his grandmother. Serino's restaurant's been around in Parma for years and years and years. And he started working in the restaurants when he was 14. Since 1985, he's opened 7 different restaurant concepts, and his whole family is involved. His daughter runs Chow in Brecksville, and he still does Eddie's in Parma, and then Pizzeria Serino in Seven Hills is his son runs that one. His food is fabulous, never a bad meal. Oh, Richard Ader. 2 things impacted him early in life: a cardiologist and a UH photographer. He followed both to successful careers, both of them. He lived at fire stations to collect data and monitor firemen for the effects of their jobs relative to heart disease. Later on, he became a cardiologist and built a 10-person group practice, very successful. He has also been successful president of Cleveland Photographic Society for the past 2 years, and we'll be very sorry to see him go. He's done a really good job. Thank you. Father Norman Douglas, 77. He was raised by a single mother. He was not Catholic. He came to church in his senior year and made his first communion on Christmas Eve, and that's when he said he got his calling 5 weeks later. He became a priest. He's been a priest. He's a supporter of civil rights movement and a co-founder of Heart to Heart Communications, and he serves at a church in Akron. Our own Dennis Wirt. Dennis is an accomplished woodworker, a retired structural engineer. He's an active member and mentor at CPS. He enjoys sharing his skills with others. And I must say that Dennis is the most generous and kind man, that any time you ask him to help with anything, he will do whatever he can to accommodate you. It's really, and he's been a mentor for how many mentors? So many. Since you started. So he's mentored many newer members of CPS for a long time. John White, 72. His buck teeth were broken in a toboggan accident, and they got fixed when he was 18. But he was always embarrassed about his smile, which led him to become an orthodontist specialist. So there he is, right here. He has a huge practice. When I went to him, and I had crooked teeth and it always bothered me, and I thought, I had one of my little neighbor's girls went to him and got braces, and she's challenged, and so I asked her if she liked Dr. White, and she said, "Oh, Barbara, yes." Okay, so I made an appointment, and the chairs are all lined up, and here's a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 75-year-old. And so when he approached me, I felt really silly, and I said, should I really be, is this really, should I do this? He said, "You're here, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, if you're here, it means that it's important to you." So, yes, okay, so I did. Fabrizio Mariano, 62. His mother was a hairdresser, and he enjoyed being around the women and listening to all their stories. And so, but he was kind of a bad kid in Italy, and he was getting into trouble, and his mother decided, I got to get him off the streets, so she encouraged him to go to beauty school, which he did, and he became very good at what he did. And he worked in prestigious salons throughout Italy and Switzerland, and he met an American girl at an art class in Switzerland, and they ended up getting married, and she wanted to move home to be near her family, so they came to America, and he opened his own salon. Vince Westerman. Everything about Vince was perfect. So his coat, the buttons on the coat matched perfectly. It was the same blue color. Everything about him is impeccable. And his scarf, he's just a really interesting guy. Again, strong work ethic growing up. He started a company called the Westerman Group, which provides financial advice and services to families and private business. And he said, I've never had a bad conversation over a cigar. Greg Scott Thompson, 62. He took a cooking class with Loretta Paganini. He just couldn't find his niche. So he took a leap, and she said, just do it. And so he took a leap, and he opened Gourmand's Deli, which is in Valley View, with the help of 3 high school kids, and he was way in over his head. The lines were down the street. He has a very successful business. He's a great guy. You will never get a sandwich any bigger or any better than at Gourmand's. Larry Turkle, look at this guy, 70. Look at the body on him. He's 77. He won national records for the 50 and 100 freestyle at the 2003 National Senior Championships and won 7 gold medals. He studied yoga in India and he bought the old church on the Green in Hudson, where he still teaches yoga, and he's a professor of religion at Kent State. Dan Latham, 51. He had cancer as a child. He was bullied because he was so small, and he decided that he was going to beat it, so he started training in high school, and he decided that he was going to swim across from New York to Canada across Lake Erie, which he did. He met the challenge, and he's been a survivor, and what an accomplishment. And he's a financial planner, which is, doesn't go along with this at all, but that's what he does. David Shima Takahara, 69. He's had a 40-year creative journey, 15 years as performing with the Ohio Ballet, and 25 years as the founding artistic director of the Groundworks Dance Theater. And so it came to, who do you put on the cover? That was the most difficult thing. Who do you put on the cover? And I would go through the book, and I'd go through each one, and oh my God, it should be him, it should be him, it should be him. I could not do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make that decision. It was just too hard. And so I went to the publisher, and I said, Jane, you're going to have to help me, because I can't pick who should be on the cover. And she picked David. David had no props. When he came, he was the only one that came to my house, and when he came, he didn't bring anything. And he was wearing a white linen shirt and a pair of black sweatpants, and being a dancer, and he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, you're a dancer, so how would you pose? And so he, being a dancer, he would just do these very subtle poses like this, very subtle. He just knew what to do with his body. And then I said, he said, would you mind if I got down on the ground? And I said, no. So he took off that white shirt and put on this gray t-shirt. And I said, but take your shoes off. So I wanted him barefoot. And so he did the same thing. I got down on the ground and did all these just subtle poses. And so that's what Jane picked for the book. Last but not least is a love story. And Carol is the only female that I put in this book, because this story was so beautiful I had to include her. So Steve had a really rough childhood. He had 2 siblings that were challenged, and his job was to come home from school and help his parents with these kids that needed a lot of care. He had no social life. he had no social skills. And so, but he had one friend, and the one friend invited him to come over to his house. And when he did, he met the friend's mother, Carol, who was a divorced mother of 3 teenage kids. But she had limited funds, and she lived in a condo, and there needed to be repairs. And so he was very handy. He liked to take things apart and put things back together. And so he said, I can help you with that. And so then gradually we'll have to go to Home Depot and get some things, and then go into Home Depot. Well, have you had dinner? No, I haven't either. Okay, so then it went to dinner, and gradually this friendship evolved to love. And then it was a matter of approaching her children and saying, there's a 25-year age difference. And so they got married, and they've been married for 20 years. So after the book was published, then what do? I thought, well, I have to have an open house, how I want to bring people together. People wanted to see the book. It was right before Christmas. I wanted people to be able to have it to give to friends or relatives that they wanted to give them as gifts. And so Jane developed this invite, and it just so happens that next door to my house is a farmhouse that is not occupied. And my neighbor who lived there passed away and left the house to her niece and nephew, who she was a hoarder. And so it took them a year to clean out the house. And now they've restored it to the way it was originally. And it's fabulous, and a huge big fireplace, and just a wonderful place. And so they said, Barb, if you'd like to have your reception at the farm, we'd be happy to help you. Because I thought, I can't afford to have this in a restaurant. It would be way too expensive. And so it just worked out beautifully. So they said, all you have to do is come and greet your guests. And they did all the refreshments, and it was really, really nice. But you don't do it alone. And so, as with the women's book, Vicki was one of the proofreaders for the women's book, and she did a fabulous job. And also, I had to have help with this. And so many, many hours were spent going through these biographies and editing them. And can you imagine the possibilities of error with punctuation and spelling? But so far, not one person has come back and found an error, not so far. So that's who, and there it is. That's the end. So I would like, we have members here, men that were in the book, and I would like them, if they want to just come up and talk about their feeling of doing this, because it put them in a different position. It put them now in front of the camera instead of behind the camera.
Anyone have any questions, first of all, too? Okay, let me pass the mic. This is so the people at home could hear.
I do have a question. To me, it seems like it's very important when we start how to get a publisher interested in our project.
How
to get a publisher?
How to get what? Publisher. Oh, well, I found one through a friend, because I didn't know where to find a publisher. She is wonderful, and she's in Valley View, so I wanted somebody. I had a couple friends say to me, well, you can do this on Amazon, but Amazon is very tricky, and you have one chance to make corrections. And I thought, this would be way too dangerous, because there'd be too many ways, things that could go wrong. And so somebody that I worked with at Euclid Hospital, she did a lot of proofreading for the book, the women's book. And she said, oh, Barb, I know somebody. And sure enough, and so Jane was fabulous. And then when I started this project, my husband said, do you have any idea how much this is going to cost you? I said, no. He said, this is probably going to cost you $20,000 or $30,000 to do this book. And oh my God, I can't do that. Well, it wasn't anywhere near that. So. Jane was very reasonable.
I just had a technical question about one of your models. Arthur, I think his name was. He's the only one who's facing away from the camera. How did that happen?
Because we wanted his jacket.
Okay.
We wanted the words on the back of his jacket. Yeah, that was, yeah, I went back and forth with that one. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep, just.
So with the back and forth, sending it back to the people as far as the write-ups, what was kind of the consistent theme there? Was it they were more interested in getting individual facts correct, or was it something that was left out that they wanted to put back in, or something taken out? What was the general?
Well, there were some things that were important that the editors didn't think, that they thought was more important than the editors. So that was some of the, that did happen sometimes. The most important thing is I can't tell my story, it's too short. And they wanted it to be longer. And we just, you're limited to the size of the paper. So the publisher felt that the image should be bigger than the biography. But I've had a lot of people come back to me and say, I wish the biographies would have been longer. They wanted more information. A lot of people said that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
On average, how long did each photo shoot take?
I would tell them to plan for an hour and a half, and but there was no time limit. I never blocked that time and say, oh, your time is up. So however long it took. Some happened pretty quickly, and others took longer time. And some came back. And one guy came back 3 times, and he wasn't happy with his photo. And finally I said, this is what you look like?
Any other? Yes.
No, I'm not going to say.
Any other questions? No? Yes, we got Dave here.
So what's next, Barb?
I've thought about a lot of things, and it hasn't happened yet. I don't know. People have asked me, before I did the men's book, I wanted to do one called 50/50s, 50 women in their 50s, because I know so many really fascinating women in their 50s. And then the publisher said, oh, no, you got to do one about men. So, people have approached me, you're going to do one about kids? I don't think.
When you went through this whole process, from beginning to end, how long did that take you?
This book the women's book took much longer because we had to go, COVID intervened with that. This book took 1.5 years. Mm-hmm. But to schedule all the appointments, it was 54 photos is a lot.
I think what you've created is fascinating, and I'm kind of curious what was different between the women's book and the men's book, and particularly around the photography.
Good question. The women were much more difficult. Barb, to the editing. So, and some of them brought clothes that weren't flattering. Women in their 70s, you have arms and hands and necks and wrinkles, and I told them, this is about women of age. I am not going to Photoshop your wrinkles off. I can, but I'm not going to. And so I had a couple that really, really fought with me. Can you take the wrinkles off my hands? Nope, can't do it. So they were more difficult. And then a couple of them, what they wore was just not flattering. And so I had to toy around with posing them to try and get, the best position. With the men, the only concern some of the men had was, my belly. So the men were a lot easier. They didn't, and they didn't bring. Some of the women brought you know, 3, 4, 'cause one of them brought about 10 different outfits. But the men didn't, you know, a few brought a few things, but most of them just came with what they had and said, this is it. So they were much easier.
Any other questions? I see people are looking around. I'm not going to go up there and whatnot and talk and whatnot. I'm looking at the others who are in the book too. So let me say something too.
Yes.
I was extremely surprised when Barb approached me because one, I never thought there was anything really interesting. I have 2 kids. They thought I was the dullest person in the world. I mean, too. So and my wife. So basically that was it. So one, I was surprised, but the other thing photographically is, I've always known it takes certain talents to take different kinds of photographs, and I've never done people, and I can't. And I've tried. My wife asked me to take a picture of, you know, her friends or this or whatnot, and they all come out terrible, and you realize there's a certain skill. So I was never able to do that. I've also never had my picture taken other than the senior prom, and that was it. And that was it. So basically is, I never had it done, and I was absolutely amazed. For the people that are good at it, like Barb is, I went there. I really did no work. Barb just made me feel at ease. You sat there, I did what she told me to, and the picture was just, as my family said, this is the most, I've never seen a picture like it. It is just beautiful. The 5x7 she gave us sits in our living room. Again, so there is a talent, and part of that talent too, and Barb really has it, is making it so easy. You know, again, it was really just effortless, and the final product came out well, and I know I could never do anything like that. So I thank you, Barb. My kids still are not impressed. So, we got Dennis here. Huh? With me and the picture.
Yeah, I just want to say that if you ever have an opportunity to be invited to be a model for a photographer, take advantage of it, because it's really a unique opportunity, especially if you're going to get published. So I have Barb to thank for that. I've known her for a long time, so it was very easy for me to respond to her request. As far as getting the information together, I said, yeah, I'll put something together for you, and I come up with 500 words. And Barb says, we got to get it to 150. And I'm not a gifted writer. And I thought, you know, how am I going to do this? Aha, Chat GPT to the rescue.
Oh.
I put those 500 words into Chat GPT, and I said, compose a 150-word biography based on the information included. And it came down to 150 words, and it went into the book.
Yeah. I didn't know that, Dennis.
Chat, oh my gosh, that is, I'm impressed.
Bill?
I'll reflect what Richard said. I was flattered to be asked to be in the book. I'm not sure what, you know, in my past intrigued you, but thank you. It's flattering. Second, I want to say a lot of people have ideas for projects, things they want to do. How many people actually complete it? Well, Barb's done it twice. So a tip of my hat. I brought this along because it's probably the most recognizable thing in the photo. It was a collaboration. She made sure you felt included. She's a great hostess. Part of doing something like this, I used to be a portrait photographer, is you have to try to develop a rapport with the person. Yeah. She was very good at that. Barb was just well suited to do this project, and I think it was a success. I'm the one of the few that probably argued with her about the length of the biographies. Mm-hmm. I do think they should have been longer, but that's just personal opinion. And as I told her, this is your book. Do what you want and go with your heart. So, again, a lot of people have ideas for stuff like this. She completed it. So, again, that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Laszlo?
Thanks, Bill.
I was very honored to be asked, and I have to say again, just like others before me, Barb made things very comfortable and easy. I've never been photographed before either, and went there, didn't know what to expect, and before I knew it was over. And
You were easy.
there's the results.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Barb.
You're welcome. And I think Bill, Mike's back there, and Joe.
Yeah, I guess I'll say pretty much what the others said. I wasn't quite sure why you asked me. I'm not a hunter. I'm not a pilot. Just kind of a simple, normal life. But I was really flattered that you asked me to do it. I have 9 grandkids, and when I point the camera at them, they duck. Okay, so when I sat down, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. But you really put me at ease. And I think we got through the session pretty quickly, and I appreciate the talents that you have, so thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, what everybody else has said, Barb, you did everything professionally, and I was totally honored to be part of the process. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Good. Well,
So,
Barb, we all
I have
thank
one more
you
thing.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Yes.
Thank you all. So the message I want to leave with is you're never too old and it's never too late. If you have an idea of something you want to do it. Just jump in and do it. I mean, I admit I was terrified, and once I started it, I thought, oh my God, I'm into this now, like with the women. Once I did 10 women, and I thought, I'm into this now. I can't go back and tell them I'm not going to do it. So I have to finish this. And I was scared because I really didn't know what it was going to cost. And my husband's, words like $20,000 to do this book, and I. So. And then, then once you get to the publishing part, then the publisher says, well, how many books do you want to print? I have no idea. I said, 50. She said, 50? No way. No way. I said, well, what do you recommend? She said, 350. 350 books? But you know what? I sold 350 of the women's books, and I ordered another 150, and I have about probably half of those left. The men's I have quite a few left because I haven't really done anything with them. But I want to share the story. My motive is not to make money. It is not to make money and sell books. My motive is to share these stories, and to share the stories that people of age are interesting, and they have interesting stories to tell. So I'm going to try and go to some libraries, or I did a couple senior centers, but that's a little tricky because once you get past 20 minutes, they start nodding off. I'll just, keep on until we'll see what happens. But I want you to, if you have that idea that you want to do something, do it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.